Evening, everyone. Nice to be back. Wait a minute or so as a few people drop in. Glad to see as many faces as I can, and glad for you to see as many faces as you can. And since we all need so much medicine right now for our heavy hearts, challenging minds, I'd like to invite everyone to say good evening out loud and bathe in each other's voices, and feel free to say where you're calling in from. Good evening.
Good evening, Santa Cruz, California.
Yes.
Hello from Pacifica.
Hello, Phoenix.
Great.
Hi
from
Maryland.
Hi guys,
Hello
I'm
from
Austin
Berkeley.
from Berkeley.
Good evening, I'm in San Francisco.
Yay.
Good evening, Regina, Canada.
Good evening from British Columbia.
Hi everyone, San Francisco. Another Arizona.
Great. And I happen to be calling from my mom's house in Tucson, Arizona this evening. And for those, I don't know how many of you know about this, but I'm about to lead a retreat in Phoenix, an in-person retreat on this weekend, sponsored by Scottsdale Insight Meditation. So if you are so interested, I don't know if there's space, but love to see you there. Anyway, glad you're all here tonight. And I think it's time to mute if you don't mind. There you go. And let's just consider our great good fortune to have the conditions that we can turn on our computer, that we can see each other's faces and know that those faces are people who are spreading a little stardust, a little angel dust of goodwill and generosity and friendliness, and that want to awaken, want to be of benefit rather than to cause harm, and that as a group we're participating in going against the stream of the force of hatred and cruelty and brutality, and to whatever extent we can go toward awakening and love. So on behalf of that, we sit, we reconnect with that essential, what Trungpa Rinpoche called basic goodness, not good versus bad, good versus evil, but just the okayness of existence, the preciousness of existence, the preciousness of your existence, that self-evident experience that is not based on some kind of measurement of success or failure or any kind of, you don't need any kind of cred. You just need to be as you are and not stray away from yourself and sustain that as long as you can. And if you do that, if we do that, we at least are turning this, as Howard Zinn calls this spinning world, in more of a direction of love. And I'll get more into that later. So with all these wholesome, what I consider wholesome intentions in mind, let's sit and To do that, we want to find a posture that is comfortable. So let go of all notions and ideas of what a proper way of sitting is and find a generally upright posture, but comfortable. One that you would like to, if possible, luxuriate in. One that you can let go into and let your body settle into a gentle stillness. Notice I said gentle stillness, not forced stillness, not hard stillness, a soft, easeful stillness. And let your eyes close softly so that you feel this internally. You feel the sense of aliveness. Feel the touch points of your rear, your lips, your hands. Feel the shape and the form of your body. So much so that all these ideas of lips and hands and rear end and body melt away, and there's just sensation, just aliveness, just vibration. And then allowing that to fill the ever-present quality of your nature, being aware, the ever-available consciousness. Your body filling your mind, and your awareness filling your body. So intimate and so close that we find no dividing line between awareness and body. They're just one thing, one taste. Noticing how, with attention to the sitting body, it begins a natural process of stilling, steadying. And with the stilling and the steadying of our sitting body, we begin to notice the stilling and the steadying of our mind, the emptying of our mind of the imagined past, the imagined future, and even our imaginings of the present. The closer we come to our body, there is a quieting of our mental activity. And we just feel the experience of our sitting body. No need for commentary. Just intimately feeling the in-breath as our body breathes in. Intimately feeling the out-breath as our body breathes out. Knowing that with each breath we are emptying our mind. Each in-breath emptying, out-breath emptying, and filling ourselves with the immediate experience. In our practice, we move beyond knowing about ourselves historically. We move into direct experience of ourselves. Just this sitting body, just this breath. We let this breathing body be our anchor to the living present, which is so much more alive than past and future, which are mental. We let this anchor keep harmonizing our mind and body, refining our attention. We open to this experience, we receive it. With the same graciousness that we receive the experience of breathing, we also graciously receive other sensations that may become stronger than the breath. Aching or burning or stabbing or itching, tingling. We graciously receive the different moods that may arise and become stronger than the simple experience of our sitting body. We feel those moods through our body. But we also become gracious. We receive graciously the thoughts and images. Thoughts of past, thoughts of future, thoughts of planning, remembering, liking, disliking. We notice the way the thoughts will often generate a felt sense through the body, a mood or emotion, a state of mind. All of it we welcome, we notice with all experiences that arise in our awareness that they're changing, that trying to hold on to any of them brings stress. Trying to take them personally brings stress, and we see that they come and they go by themselves. We remain open, empty, full of life. Just this moment, just this breath, or whatever becomes predominant. Continuity of awareness is the aim, staying here. Usually we need a little bit of support of an anchor for our attention. So feel free to use the body or breath. And then use everything that arises, anything that can be known as your reminder that you love what's here, what's happening, just this moment. when you realize you've been lost in thought, this is a moment of mindfulness, mindfulness of thinking. Appreciate that moment of noticing. You're no longer absorbed. And this is the moment of openness, of emptiness, a creative moment of creative possibility where you can once again, with intention, plant the seed of aware presence, plant the seed of embodiment, plant the seed of peace. So no need to judge the wandering mind, just appreciate that moment of mindfulness whenever you wake up to where you are. And then gently, gently reconnect your attention to the body, your breath. As gentle as putting a puppy back on paper when you're trying to train it. In this way, we cultivate the wholesome. Kindness, attention. Just this moment. If there's any strain or struggle, it usually means that you want something different to happen or you're resisting something. Just know that experience of strain or struggle. Let it be felt. If you're falling into sinking mind or dullness, this is often delusion of the mind or dullness. With each one, once you open to that experience of greed in the mind or aversion or dullness, delusion, feel free to refresh yourself and begin again. Responding rather than reacting. Finding your body, softening, forgetting the past, forgetting the future. Just being aware, embodied, just this moment. Very nice to sit with all of you. Apologize for the electronic gong tonight. I don't have my more resonant bowls with me. We work with the conditions that we have. Just appreciating at the end of the sitting, notice that there had been a little bit of settling, and just notice that that awareness, that being aware, awareness is always peaceful. Awareness is peaceful. What I may be aware of may not be peaceful, but when I'm aware of it, when there is awareness, it pacifies those things that we are usually quite reactive to, because awareness is non-reactive. It just knows. So whenever we can just be aware, whatever we're aware of is rendered a little bit more pacified, rendered a little more workable. You can work with it. And I was just appreciating that about whether I knew it or not, I was in some ways, by having more continuity of awareness, I was bathing in peace, because awareness is peace. So where do we really find peace? I'm not talking about in the world stage. I'm talking about inner peace. Where do we find it? How far do we have to travel? How much time does it take? Clearly, it's no distance and no time. It's just a matter of remembering peace and ease. That is the peace and ease of our nature. I've been away from, this is, I missed the last 2 weeks. It's 3 weeks since I was able to meet with you. So I am curious, since my mind has been all over the map in relationship to the world events and the pandemic, and being with my family, my mom, will turn 96 in May, and who is certainly experiencing the result of gravity. She's still full of spirit, but she's definitely inclining more toward, she's closer to the earth, in other words. And so it's always very poignant being with her, and feel so much gratitude that I'm able to be. But so much going on for everyone. I am curious what's happening with you. And rather than just having it be a free-for-all, I would be open to any comments, questions, descriptions, concerns, and we have a taker. Thanks for breaking the ice. Please, since you set your thing says iPhone, please give your name when you unmute. And I think you're the only one with a yellow hand. And the rest of you feel free to use the raised hand function.
Okay, can you hear me, Howie?
Perfectly.
Okay, yes, this is Tom in Houston.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. A few weeks ago, you said awareness is always peaceful, and you just repeated that. And I've been working with that for the weeks in between, and I hadn't never really noticed it before, but it's true. But it's also, what I've noticed is it's like very fleeting, and mood and mind jumps in really quickly. So there is that moment when you notice awareness is peaceful, and it is, but then the leaves on the tree start fluttering pretty quickly, and you notice that. So I just wanted to know if you would comment on that.
Well, all I'll say is I'm glad you're paying attention, that any moment of noticing what your mind is doing, you're erasing a little bit of the conditioning of the fluttering and replacing it with some moments of peace. And so in a sense, you're aerating the stream of consciousness with peace. And hopefully it becomes so aerated that it pacifies your mind stream, so that it's less disturbing, so the leaves don't disturb that peace. Really appreciating that you're not believing what I'm saying, but checking it out in a direct way. That's the key. What good is it to adopt a view that the mind is inherently peaceful unless you actually come to know it as your own nature? Thank you.
It does seem to extend itself little by little, and not
Little
in
by
any
little.
consistent pattern. But I think
Yeah.
just the noticing of it in itself kind of encourages it.
And what I consider what I'm doing, I use the language of the Tibetan tradition. They have a tradition called the pointing out instruction, where they point out the nature of the mind, and they have various ways of doing pointing out instruction. What I'm doing is I'm pointing to what's here, so that you become interested in it, develop some inspiration to really nurture awareness. Now, if you just train in mindfulness over and over, and you follow whatever the instructions are, and you do develop somehow continuity of mindfulness, it feeds itself. But until sometimes you need a little extra, like, look for this, look at this, it does this. And hopefully you have some direct experience of it. But please, and I say this to everybody, don't adopt a view about it. Really see for yourself. That's the heart of the Buddha's teaching. There's a Pali line, ehi pasiko opanayiko pachatan veditapu vinyuhiti. For those who are interested to come and see for themselves. Never about belief. Okay. Is awareness is awareness reactive?
Mm-mm.
Is there any greed in it?
No.
Any hatred in it?
Oh.
Is there any delusion? Isn't there clarity? So you see that awareness itself, being aware, in any moment of being aware, is a moment free of the three things that create so much suffering in our minds and in our lives: greed, hatred, and delusion. So it's like a mini cessation, a mini letting go of the causes of suffering every time you do that. So you say little by little, that's great. Anyway, thanks for breaking the ice, Tom. Great to see you. Anyone else? Please feel free. Misha, reliable Misha. Please feel free.
Thank you, Misha from Arizona. Yeah, so something I've noticed, I would also appreciate your comments on, is it seems like week by week lately, when I'm listening to teachings or reading something, it just seems like I kind of intuitively like understand more of what I'm reading, or like, things that I didn't like. I mean, I thought I kind of understood them, but now I kind of understand them better or more nuanced or something. And it's like, is this really happening, that week by week I could be gaining somehow noticeably, but I can't measure exactly what it is, but that insight or wisdom or whatever that is could be noticeably growing like that? Or is there some way for me to discern if I'm just
So
deluding
are you having,
myself.
are you having moments of doubt?
Hmm.
So if you are, just notice doubt as doubt, but otherwise just keep experiencing that resonance, that intuitive hit that you get that's growing. That I would trust that. And
Okay.
then see doubt in the mind when it comes.
Yeah, I guess some of the I'm wanting to self-check. Maybe this is doubt, where it's like sometimes it's like somebody will say something and I'll just be, very definitive. A statement will come out of my mouth, or I'll read something and I'm like, yeah, that's exactly it, or something. And it just seems like there's this certainty. And so, it's like the ego can do that too.
Yeah, but I think you can tell the difference between it's all about me and just feeling the just the resonance with some kind of truth. The truth is very simple
Yeah.
and it's not very personal. So it's you can tell the difference when it's personal,
Right.
when it's all about holding a position. But yeah, certainty when it's about something that's universal, there can be certainty without clinging. And so enjoy it. Enjoy that,
Thanks.
enjoy that confidence. And others here don't know how much you are cultivating the Dharma every day. And I can say that because I've spoken to you, but I think there is a fruit to that, and you're experiencing it. But it
Hey, I'm allowed to feel happy about it. Maybe
right,
it's real. Okay. Thank
and
you.
and even enjoy when your mind plays its game of taking it personally, and
Yeah.
enjoy that. That's just seeing how ego gets constructed. And ego is egoless. It's just another thing to be noticed in your mind.
That's kind of
Take it.
like, oh, silly little puppy, look what you're doing.
That's right. You're becoming the realized one.
Thanks.
And then you'll irritate yourself and everyone else. Anyway, thanks, Misha. Anyone else, please feel free. How are you getting along with everything? Any other questions, comments, descriptions? Okay. All right. So maybe our dear Catherine G would use these few moments for any announcements. And thank you, Catherine, for being so first and holding down the fort in my absence too, and in Mary's absence, and same with Howie G or whoever else functioned in this all-important role of looking after our Sangha during this time. Anyway, Catherine,
It's been me and Howie G this month.
all right. 1,000 thank yous.
We're gonna
I
start a band.
call that Mahadana. Maha means great. In Bali, Mahadana, the great generosity.
Well, we missed you, Howie, but we had some wonderful guest teachers, and it's been great.
All the confidence that we're in great hands on all levels. Anyway, please, any
Okay.
announcements?
Yeah, so I don't see in our weekly newsletter that there's any upcoming half-day retreats or other retreats to announce in the immediate future. I don't know if that's my computer making that sound or someone else's. Let me mute and see.
It was,
Okay, it was mine. Okay, it's some sort of fan sound. Sorry about that.
that's okay.
But
Soon to come, a date for next month or probably toward the second half of next month, there will be a half day.
okay, great. And other than that, the only other announcement is the usual encouragement to practice generosity in any way that feels comfortable and supportive to you, to support the Sangha and our dear teachers and whoever is in the teaching seat to continue to guide us on our Dharma journey. It's such a gift and it's such a stabilizing force in this world of upheaval and stress. So I know I'm really grateful for all the teachings and for this Sangha, which is just holding so steady. It's such a gift and a joy. So I'll put information on how to give Dana in the chat.
Thank you, Catherine. And maybe just take a couple moments to stretch, to maybe even if you want to offer Dana now, feel free to do it now. Are you doing it right? Are you putting it in the chat now?
Yes, I'm going to put it in the chat in just a sec.
Maybe we'll take a couple minute bio stretch, Dana break. Of course, you can give anytime, but we'll take a couple minute break, and let me just get the time correct. And yeah, at 8:05 we will continue to explore the Dharma during these times. One moment, I I think I need to put my computer on Do Not Disturb again. Thank you for your patience. Just can't tell you how much I appreciate being back together on these Tuesday night calls. On one hand, I had the great good fortune of being able to step out of for a few weeks of all of my roles other than son and dad and husband, etc., but mostly to step out of the different identities that that usually are not such a problem, but they do tend to calcify a little bit and tend to see the world through the lens of even Dharma teachings. It's nice to just step out of it all and experience life really freshly and innocently and vulnerably in a way that is different. You don't even realize that even these teachings and this role becomes a kind of defense. And so I try to remember every time I sit that when I sit, I am not anything actually that can be described really. As I mentioned earlier in the sitting tonight, we know a lot about ourselves, and so we're often referencing the past and on how that gets projected on the future, referencing that in our experiences of our life. And sometimes that's useful, but sometimes it's useful to come into an experience of real immediacy and see how flimsy our identities are, see how they really you can't take them with you. And it's funny, as I'm saying this right now, I saw something on the news. They were interviewing some of the Ukrainian soldiers, and one of them just last week, who they interviewed just last week, was a swim coach or something like that. And here you see this guy carrying a rifle and dressed up in army fatigues and functioning in a very different and useful role. But you could see the identity of swimming coach, although there's probably many wonderful memories, and nice to have that sense of a way of living our lives and sharing our gifts. None of it is reliable. And so these times remind us, and times off, times like the craziness of our world reminds us that we can't hold on to much. And I was thinking what a useful support it is for me, the daily reflection on the preciousness of life, and that has, in the openness to my life just unfolding, much more moments of gratitude, much more moments of appreciation, much more moments of wonder and awe when I'm a little bit less preoccupied with where I've been or where I'm going. That was a part of what I experienced over the last few weeks, but also this war that, even though I think maybe most of us in the West are so acutely aware of this because it's in our face every day, even though there are these kinds of wars all the time, and the wars of Syria and Burma, just the cruelty and brutality, it's happening everywhere, but it's so in our face right now that it's actually a wake-up call. In a way, it's a heavenly messenger. And so I've been thinking a lot about the four reminders that seem to come into much more sharp focus when the heavenly messengers are in the neighborhood: sickness, aging, death. And you see the prevalence of greed and hatred and delusion. And that's the four reminders of the very preciousness of our life. And that's something that, as Atisha, the great Tibetan teacher, says, something we need to maintain every day. Awareness of the preciousness of life. It's so easy for it to get into a kind of rote routine, for us to not realize the miracle, the amazingness of life and your life. As I mentioned in the sitting, that your life isn't measurable by success and failure, but by your capacity to experience it, and know less about yourself and know yourself more directly. And so to reflect and to be aware of the preciousness, maintain awareness of the preciousness of life. And times like this keep reminding us that that life ends for everyone. Death comes to everyone without exception. And hopefully, and what it's doing for me right now, to the extent that I can remember, is it's rendering, impermanence is rendering everything more sacred. Because it is sacred. Because you haven't lost your life yet. It's here, but it's fleeting. And so again, maintaining the preciousness, the fleetingness, and let your life, the immediacy of it, really render these moments sacred, holy. This part is the third reminder that all of your actions have consequences. The way Atisha put it is, recall whatever you do, whether it is virtuous or not, that every action of body and speech and mind has a result. And we talk about, more conventional terms, what goes around comes around. And we are experiencing, you can see I can see more clearly the fruits of my actions, of where my mind actually goes, what my mind frequently dwells upon, where does it incline? When it inclines toward judgment, hatred, outrage, anger, which it has many times during recent weeks, I tend to suffer. And the way Atisha put it, contemplate that as long as you are excessively focused on self-importance, self-view, and caught up in thinking about how good or bad you are, you will suffer. This is not a time to indulge in the personality view and the story of me. It's nonsense. It's useless. It only causes distress. Obsessing about getting what you want and avoiding what you don't want does not result in happiness. This is a time-tested teaching. The way that traditionally these four reminders were taught is that life is precious. You could easily lose it. You will lose it. Conditions change. That your actions have consequences. And the last one is that this world of wanting and not wanting, this world of wanting what you have wanting what you don't have and not wanting what you do have. This world is marked by, this is defective, this world of samsara. And the world of samsara is the world of our imagination. Samsara is that view in our mind that we're wandering, that we're going someplace. And naturally our mind in that spinning of liking and not liking and judging ourselves and being so unforgiving, it just makes our lives small and narrow and deprives us of that great openness that you are. So to me, it's never been more important than to keep these 4 reminders in mind: maintaining the appreciation of your life is precious, reflecting regularly on this rendering everything of your life sacred and remembering that you will lose it, realizing that your actions have consequences, and not indulging in your excessive self-talk. It's not about you. It's not about the idea of you. It's about your life. And that's to be experienced, is to be felt, not as much to be thought about. Now, being able to reflect on our life is a beautiful thing. But when the reflective mind becomes stronger than the experiential mind, we're just reading menus and we're not tasting the food. So that's what I've been thinking about. So in that vein of rendering your life sacred, that means gratitude, just daily gratitude for what you do have. I happened to, when I was rummaging around my folders that I brought with me, I found a passage that I shared several months ago, and it happened to be another time that I was here in Tucson, because I had a little deja vu. But it was a teaching that I read about from Michael J. Fox, who's had Parkinson's disease for a long time, really half of his adult life now. And he was sharing how he stays optimistic in the face of Parkinson's disease. And he said, this is a quote, "Gratitude makes optimism sustainable." And what has been keeping him, this has been keeping him in a positive mindset. Quote, "For one thing, I'm genuinely a happy guy. I don't have a morbid thought in my head. I don't fear death at all. But as I came through that darkness, I also had an insight about my father-in-law, who had passed away and always espoused gratitude and acceptance and confidence. I started to notice things I was grateful for and the way other people would respond to difficulty with gratitude. I concluded that gratitude makes optimism sustainable. If you don't think you have anything to be grateful for, keep looking, because you don't just receive optimism. You can't wait for things to be great and then be grateful for that. You've got to behave in a way that promotes it. Some days are more difficult than others, but Parkinson's doesn't dictate how he lives his life. Quote, "The disease is this thing that attached to my life. It isn't the driver. And because I have assets, I have access to things others don't," says. "I wouldn't begin to compare my experience to that of a working guy who gets Parkinson's and has to quit his job and find a new way to live. So I'm really lucky." So it's important to feel gratitude, not just in comparison to others, but just to find those little things that we're grateful for. And then just to feel just to reiterate what I've been saying before, to feel the gratitude like Walt Whitman said, or not Walt Whitman, Thoreau, where he says, I'm grateful for what I am and what I have. My thanksgiving is perpetual. It's surprising how contented one can be with nothing definite, just a sense of existence. Oh, how I laugh at my vague, indefinite riches, for no run on my bank can drain it. For my wealth is not possession, but it's enjoyment of being. It's grateful for being. So I talked about ways of staying buoyant, staying in touch with our life, and using the inevitable difficulties that we face as the manure of our practice and awakening. But it also, based on some conversations I was having with people and some things I've been reading, it's also important to, and I'm finding this even more every day, important to unplug in little ways from we can call it the information overload. The overload of taking in so much information, it's hard to turn away, and it's part of our, I think it's part of our duty to stay well informed right now, not to hide away in fear and dullness and live in our little bubble, but to take in information, but in a way that doesn't replace that appreciating the preciousness of our existence, that doesn't replace the capacity that we have for love, for fullness, for peace at any moment, the capacity to remember that in the midst of all of this, that there are beautiful beings doing beautiful things. Easy to forget, because I don't know how many of you have read, I think it's called Stolen Focus or Lost Focus or something. It's a book somebody turned me on to that really talks about how the algorithms built into media are geared toward making you mad, making you angry, encouraging the outrage, the anger. And we see, one of my friends said that the left is outraged and the right is angry, but everybody tends to fall into reactive patterns, into aversive patterns, into a kind of fixation and obsession with both what's next and obsession with what's going on. And then it's very easy to think that, oh, this is the world. It's just the hell realm of Ukraine, or just Putin and the evil of an unprovoked war. And it's really easy to just find an object for our ill will. And our view gets very narrow. And what's lost in it is health and well-being. And especially for those of us who are not in a war zone, whose biggest war is mind-made. And how we have access, each of us has access to nourishing, for the benefit of all those who can't, nourishing a sense of well-being. So stepping out of our stream of obsessive information gathering somebody was telling me how they were reflecting on how when they were a young person growing up in the Midwest, they used to read the Farmer's Almanac. The Farmer's Almanac was and you'd have to wait in between almanacs, and the pace and the amount of information was more manageable for our fragile nervous systems. Do you think our nervous systems have gotten any more resilient? No, they've gotten more dysregulated. So something in our nature needs to return to sitting down with the Farmer's Almanac and looking at the moon cycles and the growing season, and get back to nature. And the simplest, most accessible, timeless way of doing that is just come back to your body. Come back to this moment. And if you're want to really solve the suffering of the world, and little by little, it's to feel the grief that you feel. It's to feel what you feel. Feel the sadness that usually underlies all of our spinning. I can't tell you how many hundreds of times in the last 37+ years of leading retreats and classes, how many times I've sat in front of somebody who comes in for an interview, who, when I invite them to just stop for a moment and feel what's there, and sometimes do this, in daily life as well, but almost to a person over the years, the first thing that occurs is sadness. And that's usually a sign that the heart is softening, the heart is opening. But there is an undercurrent of sadness that if we don't let ourselves feel it, I'm looking for a quote right now. If we don't let ourselves feel it, it then expresses itself. I'm going to hit the mute button for one moment so that I don't drive you crazy shuffling papers. But just hold that thought about feeling sadness, feeling grief. So sorry, I was going to refer to the teachings of Sam Keen, where he said that what keeps perpetuating the cycle of violence, the cycle of cruelty, and we've seen so much cruelty and brutality, but what perpetuates the cycle of violence is not being able to feel grief. And those who can't grieve end up blaming, end up finding a scapegoat. And then we just have to keep plunging again and again into the cycle of violence. So important to come back to ourselves, as Derek Walcott put it, to rediscover the stranger who's loved us all our life, whom we've had ignored for another, who knows us by heart. And then once we're here again, once we are here, as I can't tell you how many hundreds of times I've read it during sitting with all of you, but we can act like the what's his name? The bugs in a bowl. He said, usually we're like bugs in a bowl all day, going around our bowl, climbing up the sides, falling back down, climbing up again, falling back down, head in our hands, crying, moaning, feeling sorry for ourselves. He says, or just look around. Look around. See your fellow bugs. Tune into them. Say, how you doing? Say, nice bowl. So we want to tune into that. It's not just, the world is not just this war, but as Howard Thurman says, we can be hopeful. It says to be hopeful in bad times is not just foolishly romantic. It is based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelty, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, kindness. What we choose to emphasize in this complex history will determine our lives. If we see only the worst, it destroys our capacity to do something. If we remember those times and places, and there are so many where people have behaved magnificently, this gives us the energy to act and at least the possibility of sending the spinning top of a world in a different direction. And if we do act in however small a way, we don't have to wait for some grand utopian future. The future is an infinite succession of presents. And to live now as we think human beings should live, in defiance of all that is bad around us, is itself a marvelous victory. So, like bugs in a bowl, all day going around their bowl, we look around, we see our bugs, we see that there's magnificence. And we also keep widening, seeing the world, both historically and presently, that what we are experiencing now, just as a way of understanding, is nothing new. And this nothing new is not in any way to cultivate indifference, but it's to be able to find some balance with the horror, with the grief, with the sadness, with the fury of seeing what's happening in the world. We balance it with, there's nothing new. We need to really keep our view wide. And I thought I would end this evening by the widest view of any description that I've heard. And it is often shared, and I think appropriate for right now, passage from Carl Sagan, a talk that he gave entitled The Pale Blue Dot. If you can indulge me for a few extra minutes, I'd like to read the whole thing. Pale blue dot is a photograph of planet Earth taken on February 14th, 1990, by the Voyager 1 space probe from a record distance of about 6 billion kilometers, or 3.7 billion miles from the Earth. In the photograph, Earth's apparent size is less than a pixel. The planet appears as a tiny dot against the vastness of space, among bands of sunlight reflected by the camera. During a public lecture at Cornell University in 1994, Carl Sagan presented the image to an audience and shared his reflections on the deeper meaning behind the idea of the pale blue dot. Quote, "We succeeded in taking that picture from deep space. And if you look at it, you see a dot. That's here, that's home, that's us. On it, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever lived out their lives. the aggregate of all our joys and sufferings, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilizations, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every hopeful child, every mother and father, every inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species live there on a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. The earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Think of the rivers of blood spilled by all those generals and emperors, so that in glory and in triumph they would become the momentary masters of a fraction of a dot. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of the dot on scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of some other corner of the dot. How frequent their misunderstandings, how eager they are to kill one another, how fervent their hatreds. Our posturings, our imagined self-importance, the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe are challenged by this point of pale light. Our planet is a lonely speck in the great enveloping cosmic dark. In our obscurity and all this vastness, there is no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. It is up to us. It's been said that astronomy is a humbling, and I might add, a character building experience. To my mind, there is perhaps no better demonstration of the folly of human conceits than this distant image of our tiny world. To me, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly and compassionately with one another and to preserve and cherish that pale blue dot, the only home we have known. So may all of us both come back to ourselves, widen our view, open our hearts. Remember that peace is always possible in any moment by simply turning toward what Ajahn Chah called Buddho, the one who knows, just the knowing mind. And that's where all of these views converge in the simple reality of the present moment. So thanks for listening, and may our practice and any fruits of our practice, any benefits of our practice, anything about us being together, if there's been some use to it, let it be shared widely with all beings and all circumstances, and especially those who are in war zones. And may they feel safe, may they thrive, may they have enough food, may they have love. Anyway, thank you. I think feel free, instead of a gong, let's just all say goodbye to each other. Thanks for being here this evening.